Matt Whitaker, former U.S. Acting Attorney General.
This is such a great conversation about America, our future, what's going to save our republic.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice with your host, Matt Whitaker.
Welcome to Liberty and Justice. I'm your host, Matt Whitaker. I am joined here by a couple warriors, patriots, and good friends. Ken Paxton, Texas Attorney General, Sean Reyes, Utah Attorney General. Let's get right into it. I mean, you guys are currently pushing back against the Biden administration. I heard you speak today, 31 lawsuits. You've won 93% of those lawsuits, Ken. Talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing from this administration in Texas and how you're fighting back against it.
So I've seen the most aggressive abuse of the Constitution and the role of the presidency. It's pretty much federal law is irrelevant. If they don't agree with it, they just change it. It's not the way the Constitution works. That's done by the legislature. So if we don't stop that, we're going to end up with a very powerful president, and the will of the people is gone.
Yeah. Sean, you've not only have you joined some of Ken's lawsuits, but you've had your own challenges in Utah. I know one of the biggest issues you care about are really, I would put it in the trafficking, but it's drug trafficking and the fentanyl deaths and opioid deaths, plus the human trafficking issue. Is the Biden administration doing enough in that regard?
No, absolutely not. They're totally derelict in their duties, Matt. General, every state in America today is a border state because of the failed Biden administrative policies. And thank goodness we have warriors on the line like Ken Paxton down in true border states like Texas, fighting the good fight, not just in the courts, but pushing back on policy in front of the cameras. He's been down at the border. He brought us to the border. We saw with our own eyes the atrocities that are occurring. All of these folks that are coming across are being victimized by the cartels who are monetizing them through human trafficking, through drug trafficking, organized retail crime. It's an absolute embarrassment and shame. Secretary Mayorkas should resign. Joe Biden should be impeached for just the border policies alone. And again, as Texas goes, so goes America. We need to get this guy reelected and make sure everybody in Texas who holds office right now is reelected, because they are the bulwark helping us in all the other states stand up against the cartels, stand up against crime, stand up against trafficking.
Yeah, Ken, as you get around the state of Texas and talk to your constituents, what's on their minds? What are they thinking about? What do they need help from to make sure that they can hand the next generation the opportunities that they've had?
Well, now, illegal immigration is obviously having a massive effect on our state. You see the D.C. mayor complaining about 4,000 people. That's like 0.1% of the total problem. We have that every day. But it's also, now really high gas prices, energy, we're not energy independent anymore. High inflation, people are struggling to even drive their cars, let alone pay for food. It's a different world under the Biden administration. It's one that I don't think many people like.
Yeah, now you two both have a great relationship, and that's one of the things. When I joined you on the border, I think it was in at least January of this year. I'm trying to remember when we were down there, but you invited me, and I said yes, I want to see it. I've been down there many times when I was at DOJ, but it was good to remind myself of the vulnerabilities.
They barely had a flak jacket big enough for your
it was barely,
chest or your arms.
Barely. It wouldn't fit now for sure, but one of the things I've noticed about the state attorneys general, Sean, is the relationship and the goodwill that you've all built. How has that happened? How have you built these relationships between you and Ken and so many others, including my good friend Eric Schmidt up in Missouri? How is that?
Guys like
together?
Jeff Landry, who's also here from Louisiana. We absolutely have a lot of collegiality because we've been in so many battles together. Some of this goes back to us fighting the Obama administration back then, and it's carried on over. When you're in the trenches together and you have great teams and staff, our solicitors general, our teams all work collaboratively, and we need to, because you would know this, General, when you ran justice, you exercised great restraint and responsibility with the massive power that the federal government has. The Biden administration has no such compunctions. And in order to leverage back and push back against that monstrosity, constantly trying to divest the states of power, we need not just Texas and Florida and Louisiana, but all of our states working together. So it's really personal relationships, picking up the phone calls and making sure that we're talking and coordinating. And I think it's really healthy. It really has created a dynamic of all of the states working together to push back and protect our constitutional prerogatives in terms of the federal government.
Yeah. And General Paxton, you spoke today, and I'm not going to say it was you played on your home field, but you had a lot of fans. You were well received. Your remarks were well received. What was the one thing, if they didn't have a chance to see your speech today, that you would like the people watching this show and the loyal listeners of Liberty and Justice to know about your remarks today at CPAC?
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I would say my discussion about election fraud, supposedly a dirty word. You're not even allowed to bring it up. You can lose your bar license there after my bar license because I talked about it and because I filed lawsuits over it. But if we don't figure out a way to address this issue in my state, which is a real problem, and I prosecute voter fraud, or I used to, and until we have issues here, if we don't figure out how to deal with that issue, all of the other issues go away. We won't be able to do anything about any of them.
Yeah, and that's so important. I mean, we have to have clean elections. We cannot have a country where there are almost 50% of the people don't believe in the outcome of the election, whichever. And it seems like it's, again, I talk a lot about this two-tiered system of justice where, the left in 2016 can talk about illegitimacy of a president, can, object to a vote, can do all the kinds of the things that they did when Donald Trump became president. And then in 2020, when the shoe's on the other foot, all of a sudden those were all declared out of bounds. And, like you said, you'd be shut down, deplatformed, whatever other opportunities they had.
Yeah, and they were working, and they were, it's a shame.
One of the things I think is important, we're asking the wrong question sometimes. We're always they're asking us, well, prove voter fraud. I think the better question is, why don't we prove that our elections are safe? Yeah. That's the most important question, right? Not whether we can find or catch every crime or every ounce of voter fraud, but do we have a system? Let's ask the question, do we have a safe system? Is this a system that makes it hard to commit voter fraud instead of saying, well, prove it?
And you can audit the results, right? Yes. I mean, that's what we need.
Why don't we ask that question?
Yeah. Sean, I want to get your take on kind of on this issue, but also on the messaging of this. Because if you remember, we went from a period of there is no voter fraud to there's not enough voter fraud to change the outcome of the election. So that begs the question, I guess, for the mainstream media is how much voter fraud is acceptable?
Yeah, that's a great question. One quick addendum, too, to the last response that I had. Not only do I get to work with some amazing colleagues, the state AGs around, who are brilliant leaders, terrific lawyers, but the quality of human beings, Ken Paxton, his wife, Senator Angela Paxton, they're some of the best human beings that I've ever had the privilege to know, and they inspire a lot of us, and very much appreciate you, General Whitaker, for what you've done in your service. Let me address one thing that you all were talking about in terms of voter integrity, in terms of full, free, and fair elections. One of the lowest hanging fruit, I believe, and the simplest solutions is photo ID for people. That's like 85% issue. Why do I say that? We were talking about this with Hogan Gidley and Patty Meckler, Jeff Landry on the main stage. 85% issue means Democrats and Republicans all think, yeah, this is such an important right and issue that we require photo IDs for a lot of things that are much less important than voting. And so the only reason I've ever heard, Matt, that people have said, well, you shouldn't do that, is it puts an undue burden on the minority population, an undue burden on those who are working class or who are maybe not as affluent as others. And this is my response. My father was an immigrant. I'm the great-grandson, the son of immigrants who came here to this country. My dad worked multiple jobs. He also said that the greatest day in his life, next to marrying my mom, was taking the citizenship oath. And he was so happy to have an identity as an American, and he was proud to carry that in the form of a photo ID. So when he had a chance to vote, and he fought hard and sacrificed, and he knew many others had, he could show them who he was and what that represented. It was such a piece of his identity, and I think that's lost. And it's really offensive to have those on the left and others say, oh, they're minorities. They're not responsible enough somehow, or they don't have the time. Don't put that added burden. We want that burden. We want to prove to the rest of America that we belong, that we are as American as everyone else, And that, I think, is a part of this whole process. Again, DC is so paternalistic. They know better than us. No, they don't. We were on the wrong side of the tracks. My dad, working 3 jobs, still found a way to go to the municipal office if he needed to, wait hours in line, and get whatever was required for a permit or renew a license. We should have that responsibility, because voting is not just a right, it is a responsibility. And so in terms of what you guys were talking about, that's an issue that I think all states, Texas has led out in so many ways, pushing back and fighting to assure full, free, and fair elections. But that's something that we can all do. Require photo IDs. It's really that simple.
Yeah, I'd like to talk briefly about, we see this rising crime rates in our major cities. Ken, it's something I'm sure you're dealing with here in Texas, with progressive prosecutors that are unwilling to prosecute a large swath of crimes. I mean, how do we address that? You saw where Governor DeSantis just fired or is attempting to remove a local prosecutor. What the American people want: law and order. They want peace and tranquility in their neighborhoods. How do we deliver that to them?
They should. Well, there's 2 parts. One is stop defunding the police. Austin, one of our big cities, took 1/3 of their budget away. What do you expect? Now they don't have the resources. Second, every state is different how this works. My state, the DAs have sole authority for any criminal prosecution, so it's very easy to manipulate locally with simple elections. So states need to have some type of accountability for that. Whether, DeSantis could go fire somebody. In my state, if a DA says, I don't care what the legislature passes, I'm not going to prosecute any crimes unless I don't like you. I mean, they can do whatever they want in this state. We need to change laws so that we have accountability and there can be prosecution for crimes.
Yeah. Sean, when we came in the Bush administration as U.S. attorneys, Project Safe Neighborhoods was a big thrust where we essentially took gun crimes and made them federal cases. We did the same thing in the Trump administration, and we have always, I think, under Republican administrations, helped the local police departments get the shooters, the trigger pullers, and those types of folks off the streets. Do we need more federal involvement in the prosecution of crimes, or can states and localities handle the rising crime rate themselves?
No, truly, we need all assets combined together. It's just that when you have a federal government that's not willing to step in and empower states to do their jobs, and you have conflict, that's the problem. We will try our best, just like Texas does at the state and local level, but we absolutely need partners at the federal level. The retail industry loses $40 to $80 billion a year to organized retail crime because, just like you said, we have DAs who deprioritize white-collar crimes and frauds. They deprioritize a lot of sexual crimes. They are not pushing gun crimes the way that you all did when you were in office. And it sends a message to both the community to lose faith in law enforcement, but also to criminals. It very much emboldens criminals to come forward. That's why we see so much activity coming across the border in organized retail crime and theft, because they know law enforcement won't respond. And the reason law enforcement doesn't respond is they know DAs. We have to get good DAs elected. The DAs say, we're not going to charge those cases. And that creates a spiral right now. You look at cities, blue cities, or at least cities that are controlled by mayors or governors in blue, they look like war zones right now. You took the Bay Area or Seattle or Minneapolis, proud cities that are beautiful, but right now without what you brought, a respect for the rule of law and a confidence that people would actually enforce laws, a respect for authority, you have chaos. Yeah. And it's a shame.
In both cases, I first met each of you in my official capacity at the Department of Justice. And in one case, it was in the main conference room on the 5th floor. Ken, you met us when we traveled down here to Texas, working on some of these important issues in the Trump administration. So in each case, though, I felt like that relationship was strong. I knew that I could call you, find out the truth as what was going on, and collaborate on solutions. And I know it was vice versa. When we needed you guys, or you needed something from us, we would make sure that we took your phone call or we met with you, we talked about it and solved these problems. Do you see the same thing out of the Biden administration?
No, just the opposite. They don't call us, they don't take our calls, and then we have like Mayor Garden threatening parents for speaking out and threatening to investigate parents for expressing their First Amendment rights. So we have a federal government and a DOJ that's very politicized and that is focused on threatening people as opposed to cooperatively working on law enforcement issues.
That's true cooperative federalism, what you embodied, right? The feds and the states on equal footing working together. The progressives' view of cooperative federalism is cram down. You take what we give you or our terms, or we'll pull school lunches from schools, or we'll investigate you. What you did, look, even progressives who want to complain about policies of the Trump administration, they cannot argue that the Trump administration, at least in our experience, we've talked about this, was the most accessible and inclusive administration that we'd ever worked with. They called us. We didn't even have to call them. Hey, can we come visit you in your state? Can we see what's happening on the ground? Educate us, help us. And I know Ken and I both did presentations at the White House at your invitation to educate people of all backgrounds, bipartisan, nonpartisan. We want to help every city, every community. And it was not partisan political, but again, this administration, it's different.
Yeah, and I know you probably, I was talking to my good friend, Eric Schmidt, who just won the Senate primary, but he's the Attorney General of Missouri. And he was telling me that in St. Louis, his office, the Attorney General's office, gave a free prosecutor to the U.S. Attorney's office in St. Louis to do these kind of gun crimes and violent crimes, and so they plussed them up. And you know what the Biden administration did? They returned that prosecutor, even though it was free of charge to the federal government, returned the prosecutor. And I was appalled, because I know as a former U.S. attorney myself, like those resources, those special assistants that you could deputize, train up, and they could like be a force multiplier, was so valuable to the collaboration. And they knew the local cops, they had great relationships, and it's just a shame that they've completely sort of done a one-size-fits-all Washington, D.C. solution to what's challenges in Utah and Texas.
And again, not encouraging real law enforcement, focusing on political issues instead. And in my opinion, DOJ and other law enforcement are losing credibility with the people. They don't trust them anymore.
Well, I'm going to work hard every day to get it back to the way it should be. So Ken Paxton, Sean Reyes, Attorney General in Utah and Texas, have been my guests here on Liberty and Justice. Make sure you catch us every Friday at 7 p.m. on CPAC Now. Otherwise, everywhere good podcasts are distributed, or everything I'm doing is at Whitaker.tv. God bless and thank you.